I'm Chad Ruthermond,
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
and welcome to NOCLIP Pocket. More fun than a barrel of monkeys. Today, we're going to be talking about The Secret of Monkey Island, a game that was initially released in 1990, developed by Lucasfilm Games, and was published by Lucasfilm Games and the Software Toolworks, and then was re-released as the Secret of Monkey Island Special Edition in 2009. Developed by LucasArts and published by LucasArts, Lucasfilm, and Disney.
But first, if you could give us a like or a rating, it would be greatly appreciated.
So, The Secret of Monkey Island is a point-and-click adventure game, and to some extent, it is one of the granddaddies of the genre, one of the ones that people will still point back to today. And we've covered these before, and by these I mean we did Grim Fandango. Did we do any of the other like real classics?
I don't think so. We've done Harvester, the most classic of them all.
That one is the most classic,
Yeah,
and we should not
and then
undermine it.
then we did Broken Age, which was like the revival one. But I don't think we've hit too many of the old classics.
That's a rich vein of games that we can talk about that no one will want to listen to. Did you listen to No Clip's Day of the Tentacle episode? No.
No.
I sure didn't. So, but yeah, hopefully, if you're still listening after finding out that we're talking about a 90s point-and-click adventure game, Secret of Monkey Island is one of the ones that has always, like, it's the one that I heard referenced the most as far as, like, this era of them. Like, I know Full Throttle and Day of the Tentacle, like I mentioned before, and everything like that, King's Quest, Space Ace? What am I thinking of? Is it Space Ace?
Space Ace is
Is the Don Bluth one?
yeah, the Don Bluth Dragon's Lair sequel thing.
Right. So not that one, but the
I
other
think it's just
one.
Space Quest.
Space Quest.
Because it's
yes,
like
that's the one.
a King's Quest spinoff or whatever.
Yeah, and they were both Sierra games. But Monkey Island is the one that always keeps coming back, and it's one that, unlike Grim Fandango, I played a little bit and never finished.
Mm-hmm.
So this is my first time actually through the game. And it was definitely different than I was expecting, both from what people told me about the game and also just like my own experience with the first couple hours of it.
Yeah, I had pretty much the exact same experience. Like, I think we played through the beginning of the special edition one time at the old Winsley Street house, but yeah, like, I'd never played this game. But similarly, it was one of the ones I always heard about. I know the theme song; it's a great song. I've heard that in the background of many a YouTube video and whatever. So yeah, and it was much different than I expected. Much like smaller in scale than I expected as well. Like it just so different than what I expect when I think of like of its time, big budget, probably like popular game. Like the scope and the length and stuff like that is all like much different than expected.
Yeah, like especially coming off of, and this is to speak specifically to our biases as opposed to saying it generally. Like the last point and click game we did was Grim Fandango. Well, we did Perfect Tides. That's like a game from 2 years ago or
Yeah.
something. And Grim Fandango feels so much vaster than The Secret of Monkey Island does, but it also did come out 8 years later. Like,
Yeah.
it is a massive time difference, especially when we're talking about new technologies like games. So, like, it was weird to throw myself even further back. Like, Grim Fandango, still a great game, also still feels primitive as compared to what we're used to playing. But to go even further back to 1990 with Secret of Monkey Island, it was like, wow. Like, especially if you look at the difference between the special edition's updated visuals and the original version, which are very different. And I kind of do want to talk about how they changed some of the characters, but like looking back at the original, you like I think it almost presents a more realistic expectation for what the game is going to be, because you look at it now and it feels like one of those smooth looking newer point and click games, and it just isn't. It's like an old ass game.
Yeah, I think Grim Fandango is the perfect game to compare it to, because like yeah, it does feel old if you go back and play it now, but like enough about it like holds up that I think it feels like it's like worthy or lives up to your expectations of like being a classic. Whereas this one feels a lot more quaint. And I mean, I obviously don't want to like hold that against it or anything, because it did come out in 1990. But yeah, the visuals are a good call out, I think, and are a big part of the reason like why. Yeah, because it looks like a modern game. Like I'm surprised the special edition was made as long ago as 2009. Like I would have guessed it would have been more like 2015 or something that it was done. So.
I think 2015 probably would have also been my guess if somebody asked me to just take a stab at it.
Yeah, so, yeah, really nice.
Or I would have said at least 2010, so that could have been the 20th anniversary edition. And the fact that it came out 1 year before that is so irksome to me for no good reason.
Yeah. Yeah, but just really nice hand painted art though for the special edition.
Yeah, it looks super good, and like you said, it sounds super good. That's also something that would not have been true of the original game. Our experience playing the special edition as being like the first time that we're through it is definitely going to color our expectations of the game a good bit. Like the fact that everything is like. Well, I was going to call something out, but I mean, I guess we could go into that as well. Sure. I think it's like looking at the game, I think it looks super good. I like how they cartoonized a lot of the characters. Like everyone looks more in line with the animated style that you would associate with it, especially given this is kind of like a madcap cartoon comedy game, essentially. And then looking at the original where everything was detailed in a way that it obviously looks more primitive because of like what the hardware it was working with was, but also like was obviously intended to look like real people, especially in like their little like cutscenes and close-up moments. It feels much more in line. And I was going to make a comment about the animation and how they seem to have not wanted to change that at all from the original, and it fucking slays me every time. Like goddamn Stan at the ship dealership.
Oh yeah.
And he's always just like his hands
flailing
are going
around.
Yeah, like a million miles an hour. Like that feels like a holdover from the original in a way that is really funny to me. And I like a lot. The dude standing on the corner, like shaking his head back and forth real fast.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just been like a nostalgia trickle down effect, but like I feel like a lot of games that use that kind of more like puppet like, you know, like the 2D sprites are broken up into pieces and are actually like a model that is like posed more like a 3D model. I feel like that kind of aesthetic, you still see that in like indie games and stuff, and it just feels appropriate in this kind of game.
Yeah.
So I think that's just
the
like
cat lady uses it to like reasonable effect, and that game is a psychological horror game. Yeah, it still just like feels like it fits.
Yeah. I think that's just like a happy accident of like aesthetics that still looks appropriate. But no, I think I don't know if this is where you wanted to go with it, but like you brought up something that I find interesting is that like I really wonder if when they made the original like pixel art or however you want to describe the original graphics, if they were intending it to look realistic. Like in their heads, because like that, I think that's such an interesting question, because like that's a thing that people talked about a lot with when Wind Waker came out. Like, was Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask like going for a realistic look, but look the way they do because they're on the N64, you know? Or, you know, like if they had made those on the GameCube, like would they have been like more stylistic? You know, like I find that like a really interesting question.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, especially when applied to things like Ocarina of Time, where it obviously has a style, but it is one that is very beholden to real life. Whereas I think when you go so far back, like two 90s computer games, now people know that they're working within a limitation and just have to try and make them look recognizable.
Right.
There's got to be a crossover point somewhere where they're like, people recognize this as a guy. How do we now make that guy look more real than he did before? And I think that the close-ups in this game are great examples of that, because they are much more detailed. They have shading, they have like detail in like the hair and stuff that is just very different than what you see in the overworld of the game, and is more clearly trying to look like a real thing. And that was like a style in computer game animation and stuff for years and years. So I don't know. It really amuses me as well, but I'm not sure where that crossover point happens.
I guess to be a little negative for a second, in the special edition, and I don't know if it's like this in the original version, but like they really did not do a lot for ease of readability for the text. Sometimes the text is just like pink on a background where that does not stand out at all, and there's no options to like add a drop shadow or like a box or anything behind it that I could find. So that
there aren't really any options at all from my experience.
Yeah, that just seemed like kind of a strange oversight from a company like Lucasfilm and like Disney.
Yeah, it's interesting because like when the one that stands out to me is I think when you're on the island, the game has a habit of putting the text in the the whole game takes place on multiple islands. When you're on Monkey Island, the name of the game, Monkey Island, it'll put the text up in the sky, which is not only a bad place for text because it's generally lightly colored and the text is all color coded to who's speaking. Also, it's just like way up there and not here where you're looking at the characters speaking to each other. And so like there would be lines that I wouldn't have the dialogue text on like within my vision at all. Like I wasn't looking for it. So yeah, I think I agree. I think we could probably spin this into a larger conversation on what they did with the special edition to bring the game, to make the game more palatable to a larger audience. And my argument would be all they did was update the visuals. It doesn't have a box that has all of the shit that you can do in it, but now it's mapped to the scroll wheel, which is horrible. Is a horrible system that I hurt to use.
Yeah, I never even bothered with that. I think Control brings up the box. And also there's like hotkeys for them, but I never memorized them all. But pick up,
right. Well,
it was on
so
P.
many options.
Yeah, which is very useful. So I remember that one.
Yeah. To me, it's like, it's a point and click adventure game. I don't know why I have to bring the keyboard into this.
Right.
Got to point and click with the mouse. No, honestly, I didn't know that there were hotkeys at all. I did know that there was a way to bring up the box. But it always seemed like it would be faster to scroll through the thing.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel like they were even in the same order all the time.
Exactly, yeah. It seemed finicky in a way that I just didn't want to even bother with.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one who had that experience. The single most nightmarish puzzle in this entire game, for me, was learn how to open the safe. And it was almost entirely because I had to scroll to find the push and pull options separately.
Right.
They couldn't have, because like sometimes it'll put whatever the most relevant thing is on the right click. But other times it's just like, fuck you. And like it'll change depending on what you used last. And so just having to scroll through all of that over and over again was just a a big giant pain in my ass, and I legitimately stopped playing one day after I did it. I was just like, that's enough Monkey Island for the night.
Yeah, it's one of those things that feels very old PC game. The fact that you have so many different verbs that you can use. But yeah, it is something that makes it hard to get into the game, or like makes the puzzles, at least to my brain, feel harder to puzzle out, because I'm just not as used to that sort of thing. Like once I settled into that, like the game had less speed bumps for me. But yeah, like the inventory, yeah, like because like I kept opening the box with control, and then so if you open it with control and you have the inventory open, I think that's with alt. If you open alt first and then you open the your verbs and click on it and then click on a thing in the inventory, it like doesn't work. Like you have to open the windows in a specific order, and like that was really bizarre.
Which is doubly annoying because there's a sequence in this game where there's time pressure to do it at the right time with the mugs that melt over time.
Yeah, that's what taught me exactly how the system worked. That's like how I got it down.
Oh, that's what it was. It was just a tutorial.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, in the middle of the game.
Yeah, I think we could probably get into talking about sort of the actual experience of playing the game, but as a sort of a segue into it, like the beginning of the game, part 1, where that takes place on Melee Island, is the first of 4 acts, and is like 80% of the whole game. I was so surprised by this. That it felt like it kept going and going and going forever. And then when I got to Act 2, that was over in like a half an hour to an hour.
That's the shortest one, yeah.
Oh, the fourth one is even
that's
shorter,
just like that's basically just like a prologue. Or, you know, like its own little, like, that's the boss fight or whatever.
Yeah, you just have to go back to the island, which happens off screen, and then go interrupt a wedding.
Right.
There isn't really even anything in the way of a puzzle there. So it is just like, yeah, the first part, and then the second and fourth parts are like almost negligibly short, and then the part on Monkey Island. So it really is more like there are 2 halves, but even then, Melee Island still feels like it is significantly longer than the part on Monkey Island.
Yeah. I don't disagree. It's. I feel like that's happened in other point and clicks we've done. Like I don't know if it's a budget thing, or like scope creep or whatever. Like the first half gets the most time and budget, and then like the latter parts like have to be slapped together a little faster.
Yeah. Well, we know that to be the case
with Broken Age. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like even like Grim Fandango continuing to be a good comparison point. Like year 3 and 4 are pretty short compared to year 1 and 2. So yeah, it seemed to be kind of a common trend.
Yeah, and it makes sense for like your first act to get the most attention, but like when you think of the first act of Grim Fandango, it does so much. I mean, there's some meandering where you're like driving around on the road for like probably longer than you need to be, but it does a lot of establishing work to make you like understand the world and the characters and what your goals are, and sets up for like the first act twist that sort of sets into motion the rest of the game. Whereas in Monkey Island, it feels like they do all the setup and the good work in the pub in the very first like 20 minutes with Mancomb Seepgood, the single greatest video game character of all time, and then you just kind of like go and do stuff. There are things that feel necessary. Obviously, you have to go to the governor's mansion to meet the governor and get sort of your priorities, and then go around and fight the sword master or whatever. That's like obviously the game's big mechanical hook, but then everything else you do, like freeing the guy from the prison and talking to Meat Hook, like because they as a joke, have you do all of that and then they don't do anything for the rest of the game
Hmm.
is like, to me, it just made the first act feel so overlong. And this isn't a long game. I finished this in like 8 hours or
Hmm.
something. And it just feels very like feet dragging in the first act.
Yeah. There's a lot of, not a lot, but like a good bit of stuff you can try to do that you can't do yet in the first part.
Mm-hmm.
Like before you fight the sword master. But yeah, like you can like is Meat Hook the guy who you have to use the chicken to go across the rope? Yeah, like
Yeah.
that does, you can't do anything with that till later in the game, but you can like waste a lot of time trying to. And like the in Stan's use boat emporium or whatever, that doesn't do anything till later either.
Right.
So yeah, you can sink a good bit of time of your playtime in this game just wandering around looking for the thread.
Yeah, and it's like it's funny because there are multiple examples of it working and also it not working. Like the big sort of openness of Melee Island is good for parts of the game. Like you will definitely run across the circus, which you need to do in order to get money to then go do other stuff. So you have like, you'll definitely talk to the guy selling maps and figure out what he's talking about, and then realize that you need money, and then you'll explore the island and you'll find those people, and then you'll figure out, oh, that's how I get the money to go buy the map, etc., etc. And there's a cause and effect that makes sense in your head that will lead you to do things that are important. But then there are other times when you're just like, I don't know what to do, especially like if you've already gone to see Stan. I'm projecting, by the way.
Uh
This is
huh.
what happened to me. I went and talked to Stan and shit, and then got to the point where I needed a ship and had no fucking idea how to get to that point. Like
Hmm.
talking to him, like, cause I had already talked to him, I was like, well, he probably doesn't have any new information, and like glossed over, I guess, the fact that he mentioned the shopkeeper in his line of credit. And so I was like looking all over the island, not sure where to even go. And like that happened on a couple of occasions where I didn't know where I was going. But like, if it was tighter, or if they cut out some of the intermediate filler stuff, like the ship is important, obviously,
Hmm.
but it felt meandering, and it made me get lost more than I would have liked to.
Yeah. That feels very intentional though. Like don't want to cut it too much slack, but
Mm-hmm.
it feels very old. I mean, we talked about this sort of thing before. Like old game in that way, where it seems like it intentionally wants to be a bit obtuse to like pad out the runtime. It feels like it's something that they actually like wanted to do to make the game longer in games as old as this. Everybody's gonna have a part that's like unintuitive to them. Like for some reason, I don't know if it was just negligence on my part, but like thinking that I thought that the governor and the swordmaster were the same person. So like
Okay.
when the shopkeeper would leave, and I finally like figured out I'm supposed to follow him. Like I tried to go the other direction to go to the governor's house, and I'm like, where did he go? Um, so yeah, like it's yeah, everybody's gonna have parts like that, and I think it's partially by design, but then also partially just because it's like old moon logic uh,
Yeah.
territory.
Well, and there's also definitely just like a lot of the love that people feel for these games is that they came from a time when they were younger and didn't and had more free time.
Hmm.
And so the idea of sitting down and like puzzling out what everything was and making like their own mental map. This game is a literal map, so I shouldn't say that, but like
Hmm.
coming up with like the cause and effect chart of everything that you do in the game can be really satisfying when you do finally figure it out, especially when you've sunk a lot of time into it. But for me, in this time of my life, it may as a 19-year-old,
Uh-huh.
it it feels like it's wasting a lot of my time,
Hmm.
which is just a side effect. Like you said, like it is intentional that these things are difficult to do, but now I resent them. Whereas a child, I would have really enjoyed it. I don't know. Though I don't know if I was not a patient child.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, it's just,
so,
I feel like it's less about patience when you're a kid. Like, I think there is just like a different kind of curiosity that you have about like a game when you don't have your own money and you can't buy them. Like, you know, each game feels like more special. I think so.
yeah,
You're willing to, at least that's how I remember it anyway. You're more willing to spend a lot of time in it, just kind of wandering around.
that's true.
But was there a way to get back to the Swordmaster's house without going through the Lost Woods? Do you remember? Because there's a part where you had to go back to recruit her later, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I had to like fucking figure out how to go through here. I guess I could have followed the shopkeeper again, but I didn't want to go back to him. So I was like, this feels very old video game where they're like expecting you to have like written down the like the path. But I just like brute forced it the second time.
I genuinely feel like when I went back, her house was just on the map. I don't remember that.
Yeah, I thought that it would have made sense to put it there, but I don't remember. I mean, it's possible I overlooked it, but like I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean it is. I don't know. I don't remember doing it twice. I definitely did not like follow the dance steps instructions more than one. Well, I guess that's
that's to get
that's for
the second t-shirt. Yeah, like you have to follow him there to fight her the first time, and then later in the game when you go to recruit her for your pirate crew, you have to go back to her house.
Right. Yeah, and you can always send him back.
Yeah. So I guess that's what you're supposed to do.
It's always an option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I did not. I just kind of wandered around in the woods.
Yeah, I mean, it has been like a week or so since I did this, but I want to say that that it was on the map. But if that isn't true, then I must have just followed the guy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a 0% chance that I just remembered how to get there.
Right.
But yeah, either way, like that is I think, to me anyway, the biggest problem this game has is that the first act feels very meandering, and it makes it makes me more happy than I should be to be moving on to do other things.
Yeah.
The whole second half of the first act felt like it was straining me in a way that a game generally shouldn't.
Yeah.
Especially not like a comedy adventure game.
It feels like too much of the same. That part takes place like in the same locations.
Right.
Kind of like in like Sally Face, where too much of it takes place in the apartment building, sort of thing.
Agreed, yeah. But like to me, that felt like it was very obviously a budget concern.
True,
right? Like
true.
The game was made by like a guy, and this game was made by George Lucas, who made Star Wars.
I've always been curious if he's at all involved in the video games.
I like that he is in this one as a gag. He's the bridge troll,
right?
But that is, but I can't imagine that he has anything at all in like any involvement whatsoever.
Yeah, unless it's a Star Wars video game.
Right. Yeah. In which case he probably signed some papers.
Right.
Yeah. But I don't think that George Lucas was like casting for Sam and Max or anything.
Yeah, I really appreciate though the attempts at scope, like with the map. I kind of like what that adds, like kind of wandering around it, and like you can like run into the pirates on the map, and like the monkey on Monkey Island, you can like see him on the map moving around. Like for the time, I kind of really like that solution to try to like make the world feel bigger.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I did like the map traversal. I think that this game is not one that has like a ton of like pixel hunting in it. Like a lot of the common complaints that you hear about adventure games especially retrospectively, are like, oh, the puzzles make no sense, and they use moon logic, cat hair mustache, pixel hunting, all of these like buzzwords that people have come up with for it, which I think are all sort of lovingly applied because they're, I think, adventure game fans are the people who came up with these terms. But this one doesn't really have a lot of that, and the map on Monkey Island is specifically the only one that I wish had like just pointed out where the points of interest were.
Yeah, it took me a long time to see the fort on the volcano.
Yeah, I had no fucking idea where I was going looking for the fort. It was it was a lot of, and then I was trying to like go around the big mountain range in the middle before I knew about the boat. And like if you tried to go up where it looks like you definitely could go up and around, he just goes into the fort over and over. And it drove me insane before I was like, maybe I'm just not supposed to do this. And then eventually did find a way around. So yeah, it was other than that, I think that the map system is actually very cool. I liked the fact that there were sort of two modes where it both got you to places and also they were able to put encounters on it. In a way that was visual for the player.
Yeah, and then I also thought it like padded itself out a little bit too much in a similar way to the second half of the first half. In the second half, if that makes sense, where like you get into the monkey head and then you have to go back to the cannibals and like get the navigator's head, and it's just a bunch of rowing the boat back and forth. That felt very unnecessary.
Yeah, and that is definitely some of the padding. I will say that during that portion of the game, I was looking up answers to puzzles.
I was too.
Yeah, we were beyond the point in the game where I was opposed to doing it at that point, and so I did not take a lot of time like searching the entire map for what to do next, and then finding out that the answer was just go back to the village for no reason. I guess the reason is that's where the banana picker is. Oh, right. But you already have it at that point. So yeah, I was just like, where do I go?
Yeah, they mention like if you ever need anything, come back and see us. I think that's supposed to be the hint, but it's very forgettable.
Yeah. It sure is, yeah. But yeah, and it does force you to do that, all of that back and forth. Like, and there aren't really any spots in between that you have to stop at. Like at some point, yeah, because you do the thing with the bananas to give to the monkey, and then the monkey opens the door so that you can go into the monkey's head. And so you've already done all that. You just go in, you get an idol, you go back to the village, you give it to the cannibals. While in the village, you pick up the banana picker. You give that to Tooth Rot, who then gives you the key, and then you go back to the monkey head, and then you go back to the village. Like, it literally is like there's nothing in between there to break it up. You're literally just going back and forth between two locations like 4 times before you can proceed with the game. And then proceeding with the game involves doing a maze with a head that is not exceedingly reliable.
Yeah, I thought
which sucked because it was such a cool location.
Yeah, I thought that was like a old games jankiness, where like the head would spin and I would go a direction, and then it would spin and point me back the way I came, and I was like, oh, did I just like misread what it wanted me to do, and I like went the wrong way? So like it took me a while to trust it enough to get through there.
That pretty much, yeah. Like I didn't know when I was doing something wrong, and like the eventual solution that got me to the ghost ship, which one of my favorite puzzles in the game, by the way, is not necessarily a puzzle, just like the association you have to make of being like, oh, I have to take the necklace off of the thing to put it on me to become invisible to ghosts, is sick. That's just a cool thing that you do have to actually use your old noggin to come up with and make sense.
Yeah. The idea of being invisible to ghosts, which are usually thought of as being invisible, is funny if you stop and think about it. But yeah, no, that whole ship infiltration part is very cool.
Yeah, I liked that part a lot. But yeah, like the time that I actually got there, just to finish the thought, I thought I went backwards. I was like,
Hmm.
that's where I came from, but like maybe I did the wrong thing. And then I went through and I was just at the ship,
Yep.
and I was like, this fucking head.
Yeah, you had to go like through and back through a couple of different doors, at least two of them, or cave entryways, whatever. Um,
Yeah.
this is another. Speaking of like resorting to walkthroughs by the second half of the game, another one where I feel like everyone lies on howlongtobeat.com
Oh
because
yeah.
it says this game is like 6 to 7 hours long, and it's like I played like half of it without a walkthrough and half of it with, and it still took me like 10 hours to beat this game.
Yeah.
I
Like
don't believe anyone's doing it on a first playthrough in 6.5 hours.
yeah, I was like solidly 2 hours over the estimate with Googling for things intermittently.
Hmm.
So like, yeah, it is not that is a average created by people who played the game 100 times in the
Yeah.
90s. uh, no, yeah, it's dumb that people lie to me.
Hmm.
Uh, and make us do games for NoClip Pocket that are longer than our traditional pocket length.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
I guess we should talk about insult sword fighting because
yes,
I
I
feel like
agree.
it's like the big standout thing, at least in my memory, about the game. Um,
Yeah, I have effectively like two things
yeah,
that
yeah,
I
yeah.
want to talk about before we end, and that is like the big one, I would say.
Yeah, like it ends up like in my head feeling like you get like these three quests from the pirates at the bar at the beginning, but like the whole first half really just kind of feels like getting to the swordmaster's house to me, and then the other
Yes.
things just kind of fall into place after that. Um, but yeah, like so you have to end up finding like I don't remember what his name is, the guy to train you in the sword fighting, which is like the first like big story thing you'll come across after all of your wandering around, probably. And it's got like the funny cutscenes of like you fighting the robot or all that shit. And then he cut you loose
I
to
love
learn a bunch of
anybody who
insults. Yeah.
yeah, anybody who's listening to this that has not played the game is like, hold on, how did we get to fighting a robot? Like
It's a
that
cartoon game,
can't
all
make
right.
sense. Yeah, just roll with it.
Yeah, and he reveals to you like this the actual secret to sword fighting is cutting people with a witty insult.
Hmm.
And then he sends you out into the world map to fight random pirates and learn a bunch of insults and their comebacks, so that you can go fight the governor and or I mean not the governor, Jesus, the sword master and beat her, which is one of your big quest for the first half.
Yeah, it always felt to me like insult sword fighting is a good idea, and obviously that panned out to be true. That's what
Hmm.
most people associate most with this game. But uh, it, it's implemented in a way where it has one extremely satisfying moment
Hmm.
and a lot of like, why is there grinding in this adventure game?
I didn't mind it personally.
I mean, no, it doesn't even really take very long to
Hmm.
do. Like, you just stand on the road, and as pirates approach you, you practice with them until you learn all of your insults and responses. But like, did we need to do that? I'm not sure.
I
I
don't.
don't know.
I feel like you get this is one of those things you have to dial your brain back to 1990, where this would have been
For
like
sure, for
so
sure.
much more novel and funny.
I think my main problem, I think, is that it feels like one of the things. It's like, why do you like RPGs? It's because you get to take. I mean, this is probably not true of all people, but it's because you get to take a character and you govern their growth and see them become stronger and more powerful. You build them up, and this game has the insult sword fighting where you put effort in, and by the end of it, your character now has more options to do things in combat big quotes on that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go and do the fight with the Swordmaster, which is genuinely my favorite part of the game, because it gives you the opportunity to take the things where you have like the A-B relationship and then actually use your brain to go, how does this pair up against the options I have?
Yeah. She gives new insults, and you have to look at the ones you have and see how they apply to what she says, rather than like what they were originally a comeback for.
Mm-hmm. And it makes you feel clever. Like the initial insult sword fighting is not it's funny because of the insults and their comebacks, but it isn't engaging your brain really, other than in memorization. And then the sword fight with the sword master actually makes you feel like you're the one having ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked that. And I guess I just wish that there was at least one other time that you fought with it.
It does seem weird that you don't fight the final boss, like doesn't have a sword fight before he punches you across the map.
But yeah, or even after,
Yeah,
at any point,
at any
honestly.
point.
If you sword fought LeChuck, it would be great.
Yeah, or at least one of the ghost pirates, the other one where his head falls off, whatever that guy's name was, like something. I agree. Or like even just like
Bob.
Yeah,
but he sounded like Yakko from Animaniacs to me,
he might have
so
been.
I just kept calling him Yakko. Could have been the same guy.
He's definitely like a notable voice actor. I definitely recognize the voice. But yeah, or even like the cannibals on the island or something.
Anything, really. I mean, I understand like that it would be difficult to implement in certain parts of the game, and I really am just like, give me one more, like give me a second round and encore, because it is one of the things, like when people talk about this game, it's like, have you played Secret of Monkey Island? The game with insult sword fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to say, we have not played LeChuck's Revenge or Return to Monkey Island or any of the sequels to this game, and they might do this in later games.
Right.
But as far as the first game goes, like it is just the one, and I think you could rematch the Swordmaster if you want.
Yeah, you can.
I don't know, it makes me sad.
Yeah, it would have been really funny to to sword fight Stan.
Yeah,
the used car salesman.
A nice alternate solution to the puzzle.
Yeah, that would have been funny.
I don't want to figure out how to open the vault. On guard. The last thing that I want to tie, speaking of things that would have been funny, and also insult sword fighting, how do you think this game's humor holds up? Did I say that in a grammatically correct way? I think so. Can't remember. Okay.
I hadn't really thought about it that much. It does have a couple of pretty funny jokes, like Mancomb Seat Good is a top 10 video game joke.
It is.
But I don't know, it just kind of really felt like a cartoon. Like if you ever watch like a kid's cartoon as an adult and like liked it but like didn't think it was that funny, but like it's supposed to be funny for like its intended audience, like it kind of has that vibe for me. Like it just kind of felt like pleasant and like funny at times, and like it didn't feel like the humor was like bad or aged to me.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think I agree with that. I think that there were parts of the game that I think still are funny genuinely, and I don't think that you're disagreeing with that. But yeah, I think it holds up. I think it holds up shockingly well. I would have expected this to be much worse, just generally from like my knowledge of not necessarily LucasArts games specifically, but just like older games. And we've talked about so many games at this point, like the further back you go, the harder it is to bring especially humor forward into the modern era.
Like a Time Splitters to situation.
Exactly, yeah. There's so many like just weird examples of things, but I think yeah, this one, I think because its target audience is younger, And it seems like the people who made the game were genuinely pretty clever people. It ends up landing. Like, it isn't super, it's not trying to be edgy in any way, so everything is very observational, or just like a very stock standard joke, like saying hello to a skull that's on a spike. That is like not funny inherently, but like the situation makes it amusing.
The three-headed monkey thing got me pretty good. With the
yeah.
cannibals, where I picked that option, like look a three-headed monkey, and they like turn and look, and then they turn back and they're like, oh, there's nothing there. And then as soon as like that happens, their one comes out from behind the building, and he's just there behind them the rest of the conversation. That was pretty like, good.
Like the go-to thing, like through the whole game. The fact that they pay it off with an actual three-headed monkey, pretty funny. Thought that was good. Yeah, and I'm not here to say that the humor in the game is bad or anything. I would say if you're nitpicking, the only thing that doesn't age well is the existence of the cannibal tribe at all.
Right.
But like, it's a pirate game from 1990.
Yeah, and they do have like those big whatever like mascot heads. Yeah, I think that helps them feel like less like racially coded.
For sure, yeah. Lemonhead, the cannibal, is very different than what you would imagine a cannibal stereotype to be.
Right.
But yeah,
no,
overall...
it ends up feeling like mostly timeless. Yeah, like even like the pirate adventure kind of subject matter helps with that.
Yeah, because the way that pirates are portrayed in media, in terms of like the Pirates of the Caribbean style pirate adventure, that is a tale that I think we've proven by 2023 will never stop being relevant to people. It's just inherently cool to a lot of people. I've seen so many fucking pirates this year.
At least none of the pirates in this game were Johnny Depp.
That is true. If they had just taken because of the cartoon style of the game, if they had just taken a photograph of Johnny Depp and cut it out and put it in the game, it would have been distracting. Do we have grog thoughts?
My grog thoughts. I feel like I kind of got cut to the core of my final thoughts at the very beginning, with comparing it to Grim Fandango. I feel like, so I guess I would just kind of repeat myself and go from there. But I feel like Grim Fandango is an older point and click that when you go back and play it now, still holds up in a lot of ways. Like, it still feels charming and impressive and funny and like kind of worthy of its status as a classic. Whereas this one, I think, is just a bit too old, that it doesn't quite hit the same spot. It feels a bit more quaint. It feels a bit more simple. I was thinking about it like while I was playing, is like, do point and clicks that come after this and like the Sierra adventure games and stuff like feel like they're like have padding in them because that was just kind of like the style set up by like older point and clicks? Just something I was kind of toying about, like, is like the obtuseness, I think back then served a purpose in like kind of trying to like make a game last longer, because games tended to be shorter back then. Like, it was like kind of harder, I think, to like make anything like that looked like a good functioning video game. So like they kind of had to stretch their assets. But yeah, it feels like it had a trickle down effect to the whole genre that like I was questioning whether or not that was like a bad thing or not when I was playing this. But I don't have strong opinions on it. I don't know where I land on it one way or the other. But there is still a lot about this game, as we were just talking about there at the end, that it does feel a bit timeless. It does feel charming, and was like a fun time to play. There definitely were parts that were a drag in there, but I think the highs were fairly high for me, which I think carried it better than a lot of older games. Like this did feel like it was worth playing. Like I didn't come away thinking Monkey Island sucked. So yeah, like I think it's just an older game, and it it just didn't do it for me in certain ways playing it now. So, but like overall, still like I'm glad that I finally have played this.
Yeah, I think that's a good. You bring up a good point specifically about like how this game relates to other point and click adventure games. Like, why is this one considered to be one of the all time classics as opposed to other games that came later? And I do think it's a mix of things, but I think for me, the biggest thing with Monkey Island is that when I think about old adventure games and I get that feeling of dread of playing them, where I'm like, oh God, what am I going to have to deal with to get through this? How quickly am I going to be reduced to a blubbering newborn baby who doesn't understand his left from his right and can't figure out how to do a puzzle in a game? Monkey Island mostly avoids that. The difficulty of this game, while more so than a non-adventure game would have been at the time, I think that it most of what it asks you to do like makes sense to an extent, and I think that I don't know if that is I don't know the chicken and egg here. Like, I don't know if Monkey Island went against previous adventure games by making a game that largely made sense, or if Monkey Island created a group of hardcore adventure game fans who would no longer be sated by puzzles where the pieces that you needed seemed like they would fit together within your own brain. So I don't know exactly how it played out, but to me, like, this feels like a great example of like your first adventure game. Like, I can see, if you wanted to get into the genre as a whole, somebody recommending this. I don't necessarily know that I would, because I don't think it's putting really the strongest foot forward, but if you're already sold on it, this feels very introductory in that way. It's shorter, though not as short as it says on howlongtobeat.com. Uh, and it's largely simpler, even if it has some moments in it that stretch your patience or stretch your desire to keep going with it. And I think that the stuff that it does uniquely, like in sword fighting, are cool. And largely, I think the humor holds up and is fun. So I like the game, but like many times when we play a game that's more than 20 years old, I have reservations recommending it to a lot of people. So that's probably where I land. Thank you for listening to NOCLIP Pocket this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're exiting Simian September. I feel like we have some words that we should say.
Oh yeah.
In a second, but we'll be going into October, the traditionally spooky month of the year, and so we're starting out with Pocket anyway, on Signalis, which is also kind of an adventure game.
Yeah, I think it's like a top-down, like, survival horror, adventure-y kind of indie game. It caught my eye, so I recommended it for Halloween.
It has been one that has like been on our list for a while. Not an entire year at this point, like a lot of the games on our list, but like one that was brought up and other people have like recommended it. And it's been so frequent now. And by that I mean, I think 3 people have told me to play it, that I'm like, damn, why do I have to wait all the way until October? There, we're here now, and I can finally play Signalis.
Hell yeah.
So get ready for that. Notably, yeah, this was the first and only Pocket game in Simian September. This isn't just us continuing the joke that we think that the Monkey Month idea is very stupid. We are most likely going to continue to have dwindled output from here on until infinity,
Mm-hmm.
and are going to be experimenting with a few new ways of recording, because we're no longer in the same city.
Right.
Uh,
I moved.
so,
Sorry, everyone.
yep, it is his fault. So direct all of your hate mail toward him.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, we're just going to keep going as normal. And once we get everything ironed out, this should not feel much different than it ever has.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like when I was taking online classes. Like, I think we had a Mystery May where we just did one pocket and one main episode. So I think, yeah, that just expect that every once in a while, probably.
Yeah, probably like every other month,
Yeah.
and then maybe every month.
Yeah,
We'll see how much we can get out.
Yeah, we've tossed out like maybe cutting down to just one pocket a month anyway. So maybe we'll end up settling on that.
And I've tossed out, let's just stop doing the main podcast and do 3 pockets a month. That didn't seem quite appropriate.
I mean, like, I think we would have fun with that, but no one would listen.
Yeah.
So
no, that's true. But yeah, until that time, whenever that time ends up being, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com. There you can find our email address, our Twitter account, our YouTube channel. You can find a link to our Discord where you can suggest games for us to talk about or talk about the games that we do episodes on. You can listen to all of our old episodes, including the one that we did on Grim Fandango. Graham Fandango.
Graham Fan Cracker. Broken Age.
Yep.
The Cat
Harvester,
Lady.
The Cat Lady.
Detention.
It's weird how many point and clicks fall in theme months.
Yeah.
Grand Fandango's a Mystery May. One of those that we just... Harvester was a horror game for October.
Yeah, I think Detention was one as well, wasn't it? Was that a Halloween game?
Yeah. Yeah, that was a Halloween. What was the detective one?
Oh, Gemini Rue. Yeah, that was Mystery
also a
May.
Mystery May. That was, in fact, the year that we did one Mystery May game on each half of the podcast. So I guess, I don't know, maybe we'll do a point and click one day that isn't themed to anything.
I still think it would be fun to do like a putt-putt game or something.
Oh yeah, and we'll somehow end up turning that into anthropomorphic car month or some shit. It's Karch. It's like March but with cars.
We were going to do another episode on Rascal. He might be a car.
It is true. Use the banana picker to pull down that bell.
Exercise. Learn some new insults for your insult sword fighting in the comments section.
And smash that like button.
Make sure you don't drip any grog on that like button, so you can make sure you smash it before it melts.
Yes. You probably smashed stuff in this game, I don't remember. We're uniquely privileged in that we were in a ska band.